Hello and welcome to the studio. I'm Elena. I'm a watercolour artist and artist educator, and I'm here to help young people who are craving creativity. This video is about one of the challenges that almost all young artists come up against, and that is the challenge of a space for art making. Of course, most homes just don't really have the room for a studio like this one. Most of family members are not artists and so don't really see the need for a dedicated art making space within their homes. And for that matter, for many teenagers, that wouldn't be appropriate anyway. I know that lots of teenagers find their art making quite private and would rather do it snug and away in their own room. I don't usually like workspaces in a bedroom, but for creativity, I kind of make an exception. It's not really the same as setting up a laptop and having a board meeting, is it? Art making is much more about processing emotions and managing stress than causing more. And for that matter, teenage bedrooms, they're less like bedrooms and more like tiny homes in any case, with a space for sleeping, a space for working, a space for hanging out with their friends, a space for gaming, and hopefully, after this video, a space for making art. First, though, we're going to have a little think about why it's so important to have this space. Imagine as a teenager, you're coming home from school, from an activity or some kind of outing. Maybe you've just been out with your friends. You're a bit tired, not really exhausted, but not really up for doing anything particular. So you go up to your room and flop down on your bed. You have a little look around at what you could do. You might have some books. You might have your maths homework. You've probably got your phone, a games console maybe. There might be a sketchbook and some coloured pencils around somewhere, but they're either tucked away in a drawer or they're maybe downstairs in the family space, and you just don't really think of them. So you grab your phone and you start scrolling. Does that sound familiar? I want you to imagine now that you walk into your room and your art making space is already set up and ready for you to use. You've got paints out and brushes. You've got a piece of work that maybe that maybe you're halfway through. You might have your sketchbook out on the table or some sewing that you've been working on. It's right there. It's easy to see. So you sit down and get on with it. You remember regularly that it's there for you to do. And you also don't need to worry about tidying it up at the end of each session. It's just ready for you to continue. You can see that in the second version, you're much more likely to settle down and do some creating rather than just scrolling your phone. So let's talk now about how to begin putting together a space like that. Of course, to begin with, you're probably going to need to use what you already have, but you might be able to persuade your parents to get you some more furniture, or you might have some money set aside for yourself to use in that way. There are cheap ways of getting what you need, and we'll talk about some of those as we go on. But first of all, I'd like to think about what you actually need. If all you usually use is a sketchbook and some coloured pencils, you're obviously not going to need the same kind of space as if you're into fashion design and you need a mannequin and sewing machine and a cutting table. I do want you to think also about planning in some storage for additional materials as well. Make this space a bit future-proof with room for everything that you haven't tried yet. Also, for your parents' peace of mind, think about how you can keep your space as clean as possible. Unless you have their permission to wreck the carpet and draw on the walls, then it's probably better not to do that. Think about putting down some form of drop cloth or a plastic tablecloth on the floor so that anything messy is easily picked up. And finally, and this is extremely important, don't forget to ventilate. When you're working, you might be using various things that have lots of fumes that you really don't want to be sleeping around. So do open a window if you're using something smelly. And if it's really bad, maybe consider taking it outside. I've done loads of research for you, and I've even created a Pinterest board that you can explore, and I'll put the details into the description for this video. There you'll be able to see lots of spaces, but also ideas for storage, both space saving and also making use of things that you might already have to store all your art making bits and pieces. For now, though, here are some of my favourite art making spaces. If you're lucky enough to have a bedroom with a really high ceiling, a loft bed like one of these could be a really good suggestion. Um, I love how they separate out the sleeping space from the working or creative space, and there's loads of room underneath for a really huge table for working on. Alternatively, you could probably fit an easel underneath one of these. I don't know if you can see because it's quite busy, but the one on the left also has some small shelf units behind for containing bits of paint and brushes and things like that. And of course, there's lots of pull-out storage underneath as well for any larger equipment you have. I also love how these artists have displayed their work around them on their walls, which I think is really important, both for taking pride in the work that you've done, but also to remind you of what you can do and what you might like to do next. The next image I have to show you is this desk that has shelving built into it, which is quite common for desks that you can just buy as is in the shop. I really like that it's a corner desk, which gives lots of working space, and it has this cupboard underneath that looks like it could probably pull out as well, which gives you a bit of flexibility about how you use the space. One thing I love that this person has done is add hangers, both to hang up their headphones and other bits and pieces, but also at the end of the desk, they've hung up a bag. You could use it for further storage for art materials. I just think that's a really good idea. The next image I have to show you is another desk, custom made desk, with shelving above. This time it's got pegboard behind, which is really good for flexible use of extra storage space. And it has this swing out table, which is useful for just extending the space that you have. I really like the old style computer desks that you might have seen as well, which have got pull out keyboard tables, and that's really useful for being able to just leave work drying and tuck it out of the way where it's protected but still has plenty of space for drying. If you're nervous of any paint splatters or staining, another option might be to choose a table that's much older and you don't care about so much. I think this is an old style gated table that's really sturdy, but also has an extra section underneath that you can pull out and extend the desk space if you need to. I love how this person who's used pinboard to hang up all of their paint supplies, all of their paints, so that they can see immediately exactly what they've got. And I think the wall behind the table is also pinboard that has been painted to match the wall and help it to blend in. You don't have to stick to just desks either. This is an old butler's trolley that again is really sturdy. It's got loads of space underneath for piling up old work and other bits and pieces that you might be using. I like the lip around the edge so things don't fall off easily if you decide you need to move it around. And it's got plenty of space for, as you can see, an A4 sketchbook and all the materials that you might use as well. And speaking of trolleys, you may have noticed that trolleys like this turquoise one can be found in loads of different stores now. They are really good for storing materials away. You can hang stuff off the sides of them as well, move them around to wherever you're working from. And some of them even come with an extra bit that you can put on the top, like a board, so that you can use it as part of your workspace as well. I just think they're brilliant. And speaking of small storage, we've seen how pegboards and pinboards can be used, But I also really love this pocket mat thing that is hanging from the wall from a bracket. You can see that there's little bits and pieces hanging from it and loads of tiny equipment just tucked away neatly into those pockets. If you've got a built-in closet or cupboard in your room, you could turn that into your own tiny art space. This one has a curtain pulled across to hide it when it's not in use, and all there is a DIY desk inside and some shelving. Um, this one has a door in front, and I think that extra bit of table that's sticking out actually slides over the top of the desk space inside the cupboard when the door shuts, which is really clever. You might not have a built in closet, but you could have a Narnia sized wardrobe or dresser. Um, I really like the pull out shelf, which is underneath the main desk space in this one, and the chalkboards that have been added to the cupboard walls to give a place to write to do lists and doodle. If you're low on space and you need to be able to tuck everything out of the way easily, a Murphy style table like this one could be an option. The whole thing is attached to the wall, and the desk is hinged so that the leg at the front actually lifts up. The desk folds up like a door over the top of all of that storage space, and you could have a lovely picture on the other side of it, on the underneath, um, to just make it decor once it's all tucked away. I also really like this idea from IKEA. It's just one of those square block units with a folding table attached to the top. When you're not using it, you can just unfold the table and everything is hidden out of sight. Here's another desk alternative that tucks away into a corner. I think it's a dressing table, and it has a mirror on the flip up part that's in the middle of the table, but that could easily be changed for something like a pin board or maybe some little pots of something, I'm not sure. And then inside there's space for little tiny bits of storage, and you can shut the desk and work on it. A similar option could be a bedside table like this one. You can see there's lots of space underneath for a storage basket, but also the lid flips up, giving some space for small storage inside, and a drawing style work surface for you to work on. Plus, you can pull it right over the bed, and you would not be the first artist to very decadently work from your bed. This is a good thing if you're extremely low on space, as is using something like this old, I think it's a picnic basket or perhaps a vintage suitcase. They hold quite a lot, especially if you kit it out with little pockets around the edge and elastic bands holding onto things. And it will just tuck under the bed. Or an underbed drawer or plastic box like this. If you add a drawing board or sturdy lid on the top of it, it even gives you a small workstation to work on. I hope I've inspired you to concoct your own art making space within your bedroom. As I said, there is a Pinterest board in the description where you can find lots more ideas. If I've missed anything, or you have ideas of your own, or if you've got any questions, then please do put it in the comments and I'll make sure I reply to everyone. If you really enjoy making art and you would like some more ideas, or maybe you would like to work through a project or learn about how you go from your initial starting point to creating a final piece, then do consider subscribing to this channel. Over the next month or so, I'll be posting relatively haphazardly with a few random things that might inspire you. But from October 1st, we will be starting our first project. This will be based around the seasonal changes that we're seeing in the UK at the moment. However, if you are on the other side of the hemisphere, it's pretty easy to just use your spring changes rather than the autumn changes that are happening. This project will last for 10 weeks. there will be a session posted on YouTube every Wednesday from October 1st through till December. And each session will take you through the next step of going from investigating and interrogating your subject, looking at the history of this subject and what other artists have done with it, right through to making your own piece of art at the end. It's the kind of project that you can take as far as you would like to take it. You can just do what we have on YouTube. You can use that as inspiration to do your own thing completely, or you could even join my membership, which you can find on my website. The details are in the description. This membership is just £5 a month, and you will get any extra little bits and pieces that fit in with this project, printables and blog posts to support you on your journey. I'd really love to continue supporting you in your art making, and I really hope you come back. So subscribe to this channel, and if you know any other young art makers that might like to join in, then do let them know. And look after yourself, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye.